Mike and I had another fight, another breakup, another slammed door, and the same silence that always followed. But this time, instead of curling up and crying like I did when I was 20, I grabbed my keys and drove to the beach. Just like I did when I was 18 and he first said the words, "Let's break up." Back then, the ocean calmed me. I thought the crashing waves would drown out my sadness. But this time, the wind was sharp, the sand freezing under my shoes, and the sea cold and indifferent. I lasted maybe 5 minutes before I turned back to my car. On the way home, I passed by a dessert shop I'd never noticed before. Steam fogged up the windows, and there was a tiny chalkboard out front that said, "Warm hearts, sweet pies." Honestly, it sounded corny, but I pulled in anyway. I figured I wouldn't be able to eat just like the last time we broke up when I starved myself for 3 days thinking heartbreak made me elegant. But to my surprise, I finished one whole brownie and then another. The chocolate was rich and gooey, like it had just come out of the oven. For a moment, it didn't taste like sadness at all. It tasted like someone still remembered how to care. Like the baker made it with a little extra hope folded into the batter. I didn't cry in the shop. I didn't even feel sad. I just sat there with brownie crumbs on my lips and realized something quiet. I wasn't as broken as I thought. When I got home, the apartment was a mess. Trash bags overflowing, empty soda cans on the table, his gym shoes tossed in the middle of the living room. I should have felt sad, but I didn't. I felt annoyed, like I was finally waking up. It wasn't about missing Mike anymore. It was about how much of my life had turned into managing him, fixing the messes, saying sorry for things I didn't do, playing peacemaker every time he pulled his classic silent treatment routine. That night, I didn't call him. Not like I used to at 22, 23, and 24. I didn't send a long apology. I didn't beg. I just turned on my laptop and opened my work email. There was a message from my boss, feedback on a project proposal I'd submitted. "Great job," it said. "Let's move forward." I read it twice, and it hit me harder than any fight with Mike ever had. Someone appreciated my effort. Someone saw me. After I logged off, I scrolled through my photos, ready to delete the old memories. But I hesitated. Not because I missed him. I just didn't want to get sucked into nostalgia. Not tonight. So I posted something simple on Instagram. Brownies for dinner, healing in progress. It was the first night of our breakup, and surprisingly, it didn't feel like the end of the world. Sometimes healing doesn't look like therapy or some big life epiphany. Sometimes it just looks like dessert after a fight and deciding not to call back. The next morning, I woke up expecting the same ache I always had after one of Mike's cold exits. That familiar weight in my chest, the overwhelming urge to fix things, to smooth it over like I always did. My fingers even hovered over my phone, like muscle memory was dragging me back into old habits. But something strange happened. I didn't call. I told myself I'd wait until the afternoon, give him a little space, let things cool down. I'd done that before. Play it casual, then fold like paper the second he showed even a flicker of indifference. It had become our routine, our sad little rhythm. I'd apologize, he'd act like he was doing me a favor by taking me back, then we'd repeat the whole thing in a few months. But that afternoon, I got an unexpected call from my boss. Emily, she said, her voice brisk, how soon can you pack? We've got a month-long client support mission. Overseas. I know it's last minute, but you're the best fit. I blinked at the screen. A business trip? Now? And yet, it felt like someone had just tossed me a life preserver in the middle of a shipwreck. Where to? I asked. We'll finalize flights tomorrow. Just be ready. You're our lead on this one. I could have said no. Mike would have expected me to. He hated it when I traveled, hated when my life wasn't orbiting his. Even short weekend trips caused friction. But he wasn't here now. He hadn't called. He hadn't even texted. And I hadn't cried. That night, I didn't eat dinner with the TV playing our favorite show. I didn't curl up in bed wearing his old hoodie. I didn't scroll through our photos or reread our texts. I pulled out my suitcase instead, wiped off the dust, and started to pack. A small voice inside me whispered, "Isn't this a bit extreme? You're flying halfway across the world over a fight." But I shut that voice down. It wasn't just a fight. It was the 10th, maybe the 15th. It was years of small humiliations, of being put second or third or last. It was choosing Mike over myself every single time. And now, suddenly, I had the chance to choose something else. The next day, as I double-checked my documents and zipped my suitcase shut, my phone finally buzzed. It was Mike. One message. No sorry, no I miss you, just why haven't you called to apologize yet? I laughed. Not bitterly, just out of disbelief. 10 years. 10 years, and that was all he had to say. So I typed back, "Sorry, I've been so busy I forgot to contact you. How about we just break up for good?" I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I hit send. No regrets, no panic, no immediate need to backtrack. For once, it felt like the cycle might really be over. A few hours later, my friends were gathered for a casual dinner. They hadn't seen Mike with me recently and were already starting their little whisper campaign. "You'll get him back. Just apologize. That's how it always goes." I gave a polite smile, took a sip of wine, and said nothing. Another leaned over. "You should be more confident, Emily. He's probably already planning to propose." And that's when one of them spilled something I hadn't expected to hear. Apparently, Mike had been talking about getting married. Not to me, not directly, but in his usual cryptic, ego-soaked way. "I don't need to propose. Emily will marry me anyway. I'll just have Isabel be the maid of honor." Isabel, his childhood best friend, the one I had always been told not to worry about, the same one who never missed the party or trip Mike planned, who always had a reason to text or call him, even late at night. I stared into my drink and smiled quietly. This wasn't new information. Not really. The writing had been on the wall for years. I had just refused to read it. "I have a maid of honor," I said out loud. "My college roommate Lily. We promised each other back in sophomore year. First one to get married, the other one stands beside her." My friends blinked, surprised maybe that I was taking a stand. But then Mike's name lit up my phone again. This time, a call. I let it ring. He didn't want to talk. He wanted me to crawl back. But I had a flight to catch. I had a life to live. And for once, it wouldn't be lived on my knees. I had expected the first few days of my trip to feel like detox, the way people talk about sugar withdrawal or quitting caffeine. I thought I'd be shaky, emotional, maybe even curled up in a hotel bed, rewatching old messages or rereading every apology I ever typed but never sent. But I didn't. Maybe it was the time difference or the constant barrage of emails and client meetings, but Mike rarely crossed my mind. In fact, the only time I even remembered him was when I needed to log into a shared account we use for a streaming service and realized I didn't have the password anymore. I paused for a second, wondering if I should text him, then shrugged and signed up for my own. The work was exhausting, in a good way. My days were packed with client visits, presentations, site inspections, and back-to-back strategy calls. Every evening, I collapsed into bed, physically drained, but mentally steady. Not sad, not angry, just clear. About 2 weeks in, I had a rare moment of quiet. I was sitting at a cafe alone, sipping coffee and flipping through my project notebook. That's when it hit me. I hadn't thought about Mike all day. Not once. Not even in passing. It scared me for half a second, like I was betraying some version of myself. The Emily who clung, who ached, who fought tooth and nail to save something that had been crumbling for years. That girl had been my whole identity, for so long. Without her, who was I? Then my phone buzzed again. Mike. Another message. This one read, "It's been a month. You've really forgotten about me?" I didn't answer. Because yes, I had. Not in a cruel, heartless way, not in a dramatic movie ending sort of way. I hadn't burned his photos or deleted all our memories. I hadn't thrown away the sweater he left in my closet. But I had forgotten to miss him. I had finally stopped waiting for him to come around. There was something so powerfully liberating about that, like realizing the door you've been trying to break down was never locked. You just hadn't tried turning the handle. Mike used to joke that I couldn't go a week without texting him. He wasn't wrong. In college, I once messaged him from a bathroom stall during an exam break because he hadn't replied to my good morning text. That girl was still somewhere in me, but she'd finally grown up. Now, the only messages I cared about were from clients, coworkers, and sometimes myself. Notes I left in my planner. Gentle reminders to take breaks, to stretch, to eat something warm. Self-care had become quiet and consistent, not just a face mask after crying in the shower. By the end of the third week, I had already submitted a full proposal for the client expansion project. My boss called and said, "Emily, I'm impressed. You might just be the one we keep on this account long term." I smiled and said, "Whatever you need." But what I meant was whatever I need. I was building something again. Not a relationship, not a fantasy, just myself. And surprisingly, it felt solid. There were still small moments, of course. An old song would play in a cab, and I'd remember Mike humming it while brushing his teeth. Or I'd see a shirt at a market that looked just like one he used to wear. And for a second, my heart would stutter. But then the moment would pass. I wouldn't reach for my phone. I wouldn't check his socials. I wouldn't fall into the nostalgia trap. I just kept walking. At the end of the month, my manager emailed again. "Emily, there's a client in Los Angeles. Long-term contract. It's ambitious, but we think you'd be perfect." Los Angeles, the city I had always dreamed about moving to. Mike never wanted to go. He'd always say, "Why would I leave home? Everything I need is here." I used to wonder if I was part of that everything. Now I knew the answer. I called my boss. I said, "I'll take it," I said without hesitation. "Emily, it's a year and a half. You sure?" "I'm single now," I said simply. "It's the perfect time." There was a pause on the other end before he chuckled. "Glad to hear it. Let's make this your big move." That night, I went out alone and treated myself to a quiet dinner. I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker like possibilities. I toasted my glass of wine, not to freedom, not to revenge, not even to closure, but to myself. To the woman who forgot to miss a man she once couldn't breathe without. To the woman who remembered what it felt like to come first. I didn't tell many people I was leaving, at least not at first. Not because I wanted to keep it a secret, but because, for once, I didn't feel the need to explain my decision to anyone, especially not to Mike. When I finally broke the news to a few friends, their reactions were almost identical. Wait, you're actually moving? For work or for real, for real? And Mike's okay with this. I didn't answer the last one. I didn't owe them that. The truth was, Mike and I hadn't spoken since the day I told him I'd been too busy to call. It was meant as a jab, yes, but it turned out to be the most honest thing I'd said to him in years. I was too busy. Too busy building a life that didn't require begging someone to stay. And so, I packed. I didn't cry over the suitcase or hesitate as I folded the last of my things. The only time I even paused was when I found an old photo strip tucked inside my passport holder. Mike and me, laughing, pressed together in a tiny photo booth during college orientation. I held it for a second. Then I slipped it back inside. Not to keep as a memento, just because it didn't sting anymore. When I arrived in Los Angeles, the first few days were a blur. Back-to-back meetings, jet lag, awkward client dinners where I tried to pretend I wasn't too young or too single or too out of place. I lived out of a hotel for nearly 2 weeks. It wasn't glamorous like in the movies. It was beige walls and recycled air and a mini fridge filled with overpriced water bottles I refused to open. But it was also mine. Every night I'd come back from work, toss my heels off, and eat dinner in bed while watching reruns of cooking shows. It was mundane and peaceful and exactly what I needed. Mike didn't call. Not on my birthday. Not when I posted my move online. Not even when mutual friends commented on my post asking, "So where's Mike in all of this?" I expected to feel something. Regret, emptiness, that sense of loss that comes when a chapter ends and you're not sure you like how the story turned out. Instead, I felt nothing. I'd assumed I was still in the mourning stage of our breakup, but maybe I had moved through that faster than I realized. Maybe all of this time I had been mourning a version of Mike that didn't exist anymore, or never had. One night, as I sat cross-legged on my hotel bed typing up a late report, my mom called. We hadn't spoken since the last fight we had over Mike. She didn't like that I kept breaking up with him, said I was wasting my best years being stubborn, that I'd regret it when I was 40 and alone. Her voice on the phone was as sharp as ever. "You're not really planning to wait until your ovaries dry up to get married, are you?" "Hi, Mom," I said flatly. "Good to hear from you too." "Don't be sarcastic. I'm serious. Your sister says you and Mike broke up again. Is it real this time?" I didn't answer. "I mean, you two always get back together, but this time, no contact at all? He hasn't even visited your dad in weeks. Are you really done?" "I'm in LA for work, for at least a year. I moved." Dead silence. Then louder. "You moved? Why do you make these decisions without telling me?" "Because I knew you'd react like this." She sighed dramatically, like I'd personally ruined her entire retirement plan. "Fine. If you're going to act like this, at least let me introduce you to someone." I nearly dropped my phone. "Mom, no. He's your cousin's boss's son. Lucy says he's very well off. Aunt Lucy also once tried to set me up with the guy who robbed people. That was one time, and she apologized. She gave him my address, Mom." "Well, that's in the past. This guy's different." I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. I'm not interested. Tell Aunt Lucy to stop using me to impress her clients. Next time, I'll file a report. Ungrateful. I hung up. The silence that followed was deafening and strangely peaceful. I lay back on the pillows, letting the weight of everything settle into the mattress beneath me. The past, the expectations, the years I spent proving myself to people who didn't deserve that kind of effort. For the first time, I realized how much of my life I'd lived for other people. How many times I'd chosen stability over growth. How many times I'd chosen Mike over me. That night, I drafted my presentation, closed my laptop, and slept like I hadn't in years.
My mother's words echoed in my head for days after that call, bouncing around in the quiet of my hotel room like a broken fire alarm that refused to stop. She had always had a gift for pressing buttons, especially the ones labeled guilt and shame, and this time she'd hit them both with one finger. Still, I pushed it aside. I had meetings to lead, presentations to give, and reports to submit. The pressure was intense, but oddly, it made me feel grounded. While I was neck deep in logistics and timelines, I wasn't drowning in memories. Every spreadsheet I completed felt like a brick in the new foundation I was building for myself. But peace never lasts long when you have family like mine. On Friday evening, as I was walking out of the office to grab takeout, my phone buzzed again. Another call from my mom. I sighed and answered, mostly out of habit. She didn't even say hello. "Listen, I know you're busy, but I set up a quick meet and greet with that boy Lucy told us about. He's in LA too. Isn't that perfect?" I stopped dead in my tracks. "You did what?" "Oh, don't get dramatic. It's just coffee. You need to put yourself out there again." "No, Mom, I don't. And certainly not with another mystery man from Lucy's sketchy Rolodex." "Oh, don't speak about your aunt that way. She's trying to help. Last time she tried to help, I almost ended up with someone who had a record. Do you remember that? Or have we just collectively decided to forget the time you accidentally introduced me to a criminal?" "He wasn't a criminal. He was just complicated. He followed me home and tried to get into my apartment, Mom. He waited in the stairwell. That's not complicated. That's terrifying." She felt quiet. "I'm not doing this again," I said, voice calm but firm. "Tell Lucy to stop, and if she doesn't, I will." And then I hung up. The second I did, silence returned like an old friend. Not the heavy silence from before. This one was light, clear, like fresh air after rain. Back at the hotel, I cracked open my laptop and reviewed a proposal I'd been putting together for the past 2 weeks. The numbers were solid, the narrative was tight. I sent it off to the client, expecting a delayed response, but within 10 minutes, I got a reply. "Impressive work. Let's discuss this further next week. You're clearly the right person to lead this." I sat there stunned for a second. Not because I didn't believe in my work, I always had, but because for the first time, someone believed in it without needing to explain or prove or beg for their attention. No hoops, no performances, just recognition. Later that night, I posted a photo on Instagram of my laptop beside a half-eaten slice of cheesecake with the caption, "Wrapped up work, another easy day." Almost immediately, comments started rolling in. "Girl, you're such a workaholic now. When are you coming back? We miss you." "Wait, are you and Mike really over? You never took down your breakup post. Maybe you're still hoping." I replied to each one calmly, almost methodically. "I'm on a business trip. Let's meet when I'm back. I don't have a boyfriend to steal. No, not getting back with him." Just as I was about to close the app, my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't my mother. It was Anna. Anna used to be one of our mutual friends, the kind who'd hang out with both of us, but somehow always managed to stay neutral, even during our messiest fights. I hadn't heard from her in weeks. "Hey, Emily," she said softly. "You free to talk for a bit?" "Sure," I said, cautious. There was a pause. I stopped by your place last week. Knocked, but no one answered. I moved. LA, long-term project. Another pause. She lowered her voice. "Have you heard about Mike and Isabel?" I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Not from sadness, but from the predictability of it. "No," I said. "Been too busy to keep up with all that." "Well, they've been showing up to parties together. A lot. And for her birthday, Mike gave her this huge diamond ring." I stayed quiet. "Everyone's wondering if they're a thing now, but he hasn't said anything." "Probably waiting for me to apologize," I said dryly. Anna laughed nervously. "Yeah, I guess so. But, but I don't know. It just feels weird." "Apologize for what?" I asked. She paused. "I mean, you always used to. I just assumed you'd, you know." "I used to apologize because I cared. But what if I don't anymore?" There was a noise on the other end, a cough, a door closing. Then she hung up, saying something about being busy. But I already knew. She wasn't alone. Later that night, she sent me a message. Long, rambling, half an apology, half a confession. Mike had been staying with her for a few days. He was miserable, she said, still in love with me, she insisted. Isabel meant nothing, just a show, just noise. And all I could think was, why is this the first I'm hearing from him? No texts, no calls, not until now, after his usual fallback plans had collapsed. It was always like this. He only remembered how much he needed me once he ran out of ways to prove he didn't. Then my screen lit up. Blocked call, Mike. I didn't answer. Not because I was angry, but because I genuinely didn't want to.
It was funny, in a way, how long it took Mike to call me. Not funny, haha, more like funny sad. A full month had passed since I moved to LA. I'd blocked him across every platform, changed the passwords to our shared accounts, and packed away everything that had even the faintest trace of him. But the moment he ran out of people to manipulate, there I was, back on his radar. His first call didn't surprise me. I didn't answer. The second call came later that night, around 1:32 a.m. I was in the middle of finishing a pitch deck when my screen lit up again. Blocked caller. He was trying to find a way in through the cracks, but this time I wasn't leaking. I went to bed without responding. The next morning, I received a text from an unknown number. "Emily, where did you put my suitcase?" Not, "How are you?" Not, "Can we talk?" Just logistics. A lame excuse to pretend I still owed him something. I didn't respond. That night, after a marathon client meeting that stretched until nearly midnight, I felt a flicker of weakness. The kind that creeps in when you're tired and lonely and full of memories you didn't ask to remember. So when my phone rang again and I saw his name, I answered. His voice was familiar, low, a little hoarse. "Where are you?" "I'm in my office," I replied without hesitation. "Why did you block me?" "Because we broke up." His voice rose. "So breaking up means you block me now? We've broken up before and you never—" "How do you know I didn't? Did you ever even try calling me back during any of our breakups? Or was it always me doing the chasing?" He fell silent, and in that silence, something shifted. "Where are you, Emily?" he asked again. It was the end of the workday, and coworkers were walking past my door, waving goodnight. I waved back, answering each smile like I wasn't holding a conversation that once would have shattered me. When I realized Mike was still on the line, I said simply, Hello? His voice softened. This is the first time you've ever ignored me. I didn't respond because he was right, but he was also too late. He tried again. You moved to Los Angeles. Yeah, I said, for work. You never used to travel. You always said if you left, there'd be no one to take care of me. I almost laughed. Almost. I used to say that, but we're not together anymore, and I don't plan my life around you now. Another pause. You used to give up everything for me. I know. So what happened? What happened? 10 years happened. 1,000 apologies happened. 100 nights of crying into my pillow while he partied with friends or ghosted me after fights happened. What happened is, I grew up. So I answered plainly. I realized that I gave up too much, and for what? He didn't respond. I think he expected me to cave, to cry, to break into one of my soft, trembling monologues about how I missed him, how I'd do anything to fix us. But this time, I just waited. And when he said nothing, when he couldn't even bring himself to ask me back, I ended the call. It should have hurt, but it didn't. Because healing doesn't always come with a loud fanfare. Sometimes it shows up in silence, in the quiet knowing that you finally reached a point where your peace matters more than the person who keeps interrupting it. A few days later, my team finalized a product presentation for a big client partnership. My boss, Scott, sent a company-wide email praising my work. Emily's proposal landed us a massive opportunity. Let's celebrate this win. I stood at my desk rereading those words like they were some ancient scripture. I had become the version of myself that my younger self always dreamed of. Capable, independent, respected. No Mike in sight. That evening after work, I was invited to a casual housewarming party. A few of my new colleagues had found places nearby, and we were all slowly settling into the city. We laughed over wine, played board games I didn't quite understand, and argued about which ramen shop downtown was superior. It was a kind of lightness I hadn't felt in years. No one there knew me as Mike's girlfriend. No one saw me as the girl who always apologized. I was just Emily. Halfway through the evening, my phone buzzed again. A new number, a new message. Can we talk? I didn't reply. Instead, I muted the notification, put my phone in my bag, and leaned back into the couch cushion, smiling as someone tried to teach me how to play a card game I'd never heard of. The first time I saw Mike again, it wasn't on purpose. I hadn't planned for it. I hadn't even dreamed about it because by then, he wasn't showing up in my dreams anymore. It happened after work, on a Friday. My coworkers and I were walking out of the office together, laughing about something dumb someone had said during a meeting. The sun was setting, the air smelled faintly of street tacos, and for once, everything in my life felt easy. And then I saw him. He stood just across the street, leaning against the sleek black car, dressed in a suit. He looked at a place, too polished for the neighborhood, like a misplaced puzzle piece from a different life. One of my coworkers nudged me. Whoa, I don't think this building has ever seen someone that handsome. I didn't have to look twice. Mike. After more than a month of silence, there he was, standing 10 feet away, staring at me like he had all the answers to questions I stopped asking. My coworkers exchanged glances, clearly sensing something was off. One of them cleared their throat and said, "Looks like Emily's busy tonight. Let's reschedule." Mike smiled at them, polite, charming, still pretending to be the version of himself people liked. Then they were gone, and it was just us. He walked toward me, calm and measured. His cologne was the same, clean, expensive, and overwhelmingly familiar. "I've been waiting for you," he said. "Funny, I wasn't coming." "Why haven't you come back to me yet?" That question again. Not, "How are you?" or "Can we talk?" Just a demand disguised as sentiment. I sighed. "You really think that's how this works?" He tilted his head. "It always worked before." And that was the problem. I had trained him to believe I'd always come back, that he could hurt me, ignore me, replace me, and I'd still be there, arms wide open, ready to forgive without even being asked. But this time, there was no apology. Just the question, "Why haven't you come back?" I said, "Because I don't want to." He looked genuinely stunned, like the sentence hadn't computed. "What?" "I don't want to come back, Mike." He took a step closer. I took one back. My small movement, just a few inches, hit him harder than a slap. I saw it in his eyes, the flicker of something raw, something real, maybe even panic. "You're avoiding me." "I used to beg you," I said, voice steady. "Do you remember that?" He didn't respond. "I begged you to stay. I cried. I apologized for things I didn't do just to keep you. I bought gifts for Isabel because I thought maybe if she liked me, you wouldn't leave me for her." He winced at the name. I continued, relentless. "And you let me. You let me bend and break and shrink just to fit into the tiny space you had left for me in your life." Silence. "I'm not doing that anymore." Mike opened his mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time, he didn't have a speech prepared. "Before you ask if I ever loved you," I said softly, "ask yourself, did you ever love me?" His face tightened. I didn't wait for an answer. I walked past him, my heels clicking on the pavement like a clock ticking down on a version of my life that no longer fit. And I didn't look back, because I didn't need to anymore. The next week, I found out through a client meeting that Mike had invested in a mid-sized energy company, and guess what? That company was now partnering with us, which meant he was now technically my client. Of course, fate had a twisted sense of humor. The day of the meeting, I dressed sharply. Simple makeup, hair clean and pulled back, no statement earrings, no perfume, just quiet confidence. Mike arrived with the executive team. He looked the same, charming and polished, but I could see the flickers of something else underneath. Nervousness, regret. Good. My boss, Scott, led the introductions. "Mike White, this is Emily. She'll be leading the technical side of our partnership." He extended his hand. "Pleasure to meet you." I shook it without flinching. "Likewise." The meeting was long. Technical specs, service packages, timelines. He didn't ask about our history. He didn't try to pull me aside. He just sat there, nodding, pretending to be completely focused, except I caught his eyes flicking toward me more than once. Afterward, as we were packing up, Scott clapped me on the back. "Great work, Emily. Join us for dinner, yeah? Mike wants to take us all out to celebrate." I almost declined. Almost. But then I remembered Olivia's words. Toxic relationships should be cut clean, not left open like a wound. So, I agreed. And that's when we ran into Isabel.
I spotted her before she saw me. Isabel, walking straight into the restaurant like she owned it, heels clicking, eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on Mike. She lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "Mike," she cooed, "you didn't tell me you'd be here." Her tone wasn't flirtatious. It was worse. Possessive. Casual in the way only people with unspoken history can be. Scott, always the overly polite host, stood and gestured toward the table. "Ah, if you're a friend of Mike's, you should join us. We were just getting started." I watched as Isabel slid into the seat right beside Mike and wrapped her arm around his like they were some power couple from a soap opera. My stomach turned, but not from jealousy, just the sheer absurdity of it all. Then came her line. "Oh, Mike and I aren't like that. You're all misunderstanding. He has a girlfriend." She said it with a sugary tone, fake innocence dripping off every word. One of my colleagues raised an eyebrow. "Then I feel bad for his girlfriend." Scott sighed and rubbed his temple. Before I could react, someone else spoke up. Sharp, clear, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. It was Olivia. She had shown up late, fashionably, as always, and now stood beside me, arms crossed, expression unreadable. She looked Isabel up and down like she was scanning a barcode. "Wow," Olivia said coolly. "I didn't expect our lead product manager to be so young. Must be very talented." Isabel smiled, sweet and condescending. Olivia smiled back, cold and terrifying. "I look young because there's this thing called cosmetic procedures. You spend enough money and it makes you pretty. Unfortunately, it does nothing for intelligence. Otherwise, I'd suggest you try it." The entire table froze. Isabel's smile faltered. Olivia continued, calm as ever. "But if injections won't help your brain, there's something else that might. A mirror. Or, if that's too much work, just pull out your phone, turn on the front camera, and look at yourself. Maybe then you'd realize you should have stayed home tonight." My jaw dropped slightly. Olivia was just getting started. If you were actually Mike's real girlfriend, I'd understand this delusional behavior. I'd even let it slide. But you're not. So who exactly are you performing for? She glanced around the table. Let's see. Other than Emily and me, it's just men here. So what, is it a competition for attention? Isabel opened her mouth, but Olivia raised her hand. No, let me finish. I really want to understand, because from the moment you walked in, all I've seen is a jobless freeloader conveniently bumping into an old friend who just happens to be buying dinner for his business associates. By the way, Scott, that last bit was the most important part. If this is how their company entertains, I'm going to have to reconsider working with them long term. Unprofessional behavior like this doesn't reflect well on your partners. She grabbed her bag, turned to me and said, "Let's go." I was frozen. Scott looked like he had just swallowed his tongue. Mike looked like someone had unplugged him from reality. But Olivia, she looked radiant. As we left the restaurant, she waved over her shoulder and said, "Enjoy your dinner, everyone." I didn't speak until we were halfway down the street. "Olivia, what just happened?" She glanced at me and shrugged. "That girl needed to be taken down a few pegs, and you needed backup." "I didn't ask for it." "You didn't have to," she said. I was watching. I laughed softly. "You're scary when you want to be." "I'm always scary. That's why I get results." Turns out, Olivia lived just a few buildings over. As we walked toward our shared neighborhood, she casually asked, "Do you still love him?" I didn't answer right away. She didn't press. Finally, I said, "I wouldn't dare." She nodded. "Good.
then don't. I liked Olivia immediately, but after that night, I started to trust her. She was 4 years older than me, sharp as glass, and completely untouchable in our company. Everyone respected her, even our boss, especially our boss, and she didn't tolerate nonsense. You know what you keep losing in love? She asked a few days later over coffee. Because I keep choosing men who treat me like a resume to skim? That too, she smirked, but mostly because you treat them like a full-time job. You overcommit, overfunction, and that makes them lazy. She wasn't wrong. I had spent years adjusting myself to fit into Mike's lifestyle, buying things I didn't need, acting like money didn't matter when it really did, smiling through his jokes about how I wouldn't survive without him. But Olivia? She didn't survive. She thrived. That night, as we walked back to our building, she offered, "Let's work out sometime. I know a great trainer." I smiled. "How about tomorrow?" Her grin widened. "You're learning." When I got home, my company group chat was buzzing. People were still talking about what Olivia said at dinner. Legend. She really told that girl off. Scott looked like he was gonna faint. Olivia for president. She replied simply, "If he fires me, I'll start my own company. Let's see who he begs first." And that was the moment I realized people like Olivia succeed not just because they're talented, but because they know their worth. They don't barter with it. Meanwhile, I had handed my worth to Mike on a silver platter for years and then begged him not to drop it. Never again.
A week passed after Olivia's surgical takedown at dinner. Things returned to normal, or at least a new version of it. Work was nonstop. Olivia and I started meeting up regularly, not just at the gym, but for coffee, quick dinners, or walks after long days. Her presence felt like armor I hadn't known I needed. Then one evening, just as I was leaving the office, Mike called again. I was alone in the elevator, holding a protein shake and a headache, when his name appeared on the screen. Against my better judgment, I picked up. His voice came through quieter than usual, hoarse again. "Emily, can I take you to dinner?" I was tired. Not just work tired, tired in my bones. Tired in a way you get when you've been carrying something for 10 years and finally set it down. Still, I said yes. Not because I wanted closure, not because I had hope, because I needed to look it in the eye one last time. To confirm what I already knew. It was over. Not with a scream, but with a sigh. We met at a small Italian place he used to love. He chose the table, pulled out my chair, and for a brief moment, it looked like old times. Except it wasn't. I wasn't. Mike looked thinner, maybe sleep-deprived. There was a twitch in his jaw, a nervous energy that didn't fit the man I used to chase after, like he was the last train out of town. He cleared his throat, then spoke. "I'm sorry, Emily." I looked up. "I hurt you, I know that, and I never said it because I was scared or proud or just stupid. Probably all three." He took a breath, voice trembling slightly. "Can you forgive me?" I didn't answer. I let the words sit there, hover in the space between us like condensation. "I swear," he continued, "I'll never do it again. No more breakups, no more walking away. If you agree to marry me, we can do it tomorrow. I'll take care of everything." And there it was. The proposal I had cried for, begged for, prayed for. Finally offered, served lukewarm on a plate of desperation. I looked at him, really looked at him, and all I could think was, this is so late, it's laughable. Months ago, even weeks ago, I might have melted. Now, I just felt tired. So I asked him, "Why do you want to marry me, Mike?"
His response was immediate. Because I love you. I can't live without you. I nodded slowly. And when did you figure that out? Before or after Isabel? He winced. She doesn't mean anything. It was never real. I was just trying to make you jealous, I guess. I let out a quiet, humorless laugh. You know what you taught me, Mike? He looked up. You taught me that no matter who you lose, you can still live just fine. His face fell. I stood, grabbed my coat. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. This wasn't a dramatic, it wasn't a big breakup scene. It was just clean. I said, I'm giving you that lesson now. You'll be okay, eventually. Emily, wait. I leaned down just slightly, close enough for him to hear me, but not close enough to reach me. You had a decade. I'm done handing out chances. Then I turned and walked away. No tears, no final glance. It was freedom, not farewell. The next morning, I signed the final lease agreement on my new apartment in Los Angeles. Big windows, minimalist kitchen, the kind of place that felt like the start of something. I invited a few colleagues over that weekend. Nothing fancy, just pizza, music, and the dull clink of wine glasses over laughter. We played charades, burned the garlic bread, and made fun of Scott's obsession with herbal tea. I was standing at the balcony railing when Olivia appeared beside me. You okay? She asked. I'm good, I said. Squinted, like actually good or fake good? Actually good, I smiled. Why? Because your ex is about to ruin the vibe. I blinked. What? She nodded toward the street. Sure enough, Mike stood at the front gate of my building, suit on again, bouquet in hand. I groaned. The entire table inside fell into a hush. Everyone turned to the window, whispering like teenagers at a slumber party. Scott raised his eyebrow. Did he just bring flowers to a corporate team mixer? Olivia sighed. God, he's dramatic, like a discount movie protagonist. I stepped outside into the hallway, pressed the elevator button, and waited. Slowly, calmly. When I got to the entrance, Mike was still there. Emily, he said, stepping forward. No, I said. I just want... No, I repeated. You wanted me when I had you. Now you want a chance to feel wanted again. I get it. But I'm not your reassurance. He hesitated. You really don't love me anymore? I met his eyes, and this time I didn't flinch. I loved you so much it nearly killed me, but I've learned better. You sound different. I am different. He opened his mouth, but I turned and walked away again. Back inside, Olivia passed me a drink. So, you done? Done. She smirked. Good. Now let's talk about the guy I want to set you up with. He's adorable, younger, probably too confident. You'll like him. I rolled my eyes. If he has a gym membership and doesn't believe therapy is fake, I'm listening. Deal. And just like that, the story I thought would haunt me forever became just a chapter.
2 years passed, just like that. The product line Olivia and I had developed together had finally turned a profit. Real profit. The kind that gets people in upper management to stop what they're doing and actually look up from their dashboards. Revenue dashboards were updating every minute now, each number a small badge of validation. I was sitting in the conference room after a quarterly review when Olivia leaned over and whispered, "Coffee this afternoon? I found a place with the cappuccino that actually makes sense." I laughed. I've got 2 reports due and a meeting with procurement. She smirked. You're turning down caffeine? What's gotten into you? Before I can answer, she raised one brow and added casually, Fine, but you are coming to meet the guy I told you about. I blinked. Wait, that was real? That wasn't just you threatening me into socializing? Olivia tilted her head. Why do you always assume I joke about cute men? I'm a woman of action, and this one's a gem, my gym buddy, 1 year younger, confident, and not an idiot. I triple-checked. I opened my mouth to protest, but she cut me off. Don't even think about Mike. If I even sense a flicker of nostalgia, I will personally report you to HR for emotional trespassing. I laughed again, holding my hands up in surrender. Okay, I'll go, but only because I'm intrigued. You'll thank me. Spoiler alert, I did. The guy was not just cute, he was charming in a way that wasn't performative. Easy smile, well-timed sarcasm, a sharp mind with none of the condescension I had grown used to dodging in the dating pool. He listened when I spoke. He asked questions and actually waited for the answers. And most importantly, he didn't once mention his crazy ex. We had coffee, then another one the following week, then sushi, then a walk through Griffith Park, where we both admitted me hated hiking but liked the idea of hiking. It felt easy, effortless even. Then one night, he was dropping me off after dinner when we ran right into Mike. It was like time had staged a theatrical joke at my expense. Mike, standing by a black car again, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He froze when he saw me holding someone else's hand. Then he looked at the guy, then back at me. His eyes narrowed, his jaw tightened. He didn't say anything. Just turned, got into his car, and drove away. For the next 3 days, Mike disappeared from every channel. No calls, no surprise visits, no desperate text messages with vague, I just wanted to check in phrasing. Nothing. Olivia texted me the day after. He's probably at home nursing his ego. Let him. You nursed your wounds in silence. He can try that too. She was right. Again. For years, I had made excuses for Mike, trying to see the best in him, digging around in the mud for diamonds that weren't even there. But healing, that had been a solo act. No audience, no applause. Just me, night after night, piecing myself back together with nothing but willpower and a few too many brownies. Now, I didn't owe him anything. Not a confrontation, not a goodbye, not even the dignity of my attention. And I had better things to do, like my second date. The new guy met me at a food truck festival, and we spent the night sampling overpriced tacos and rating churros like we were judges on a reality show. He kissed me goodnight without asking first, just leaned in with quiet confidence and zero pressure. It was the kind of moment I used to think only existed in movies. Turns out, real life is better when it's not built around fear. Later that night, I curled into bed, scrolling through my calendar when I paused. Exactly 6 months since I'd moved to LA. Exactly 6 months since I'd stopped apologizing for wanting more. Exactly 6 months since I'd started again. Healing isn't pretty. It's not linear. It doesn't always come with a dramatic revelation or a perfect comeback. Sometimes healing is eating alone in a hotel room. Sometimes it's walking out of a meeting knowing you crushed it. Sometimes it's laughing at a date's terrible pun about guacamole because you're not bracing for disappointment. You're just there, fully present. And sometimes healing is realizing that the person you used to cry over no longer has access to your heart or your calendar. I turned off the light and let the city hum around me. No tears, no flashbacks, just the gentle rhythm of new beginnings.